Hello YouTubers, welcome to another Doctor Who action figure review, as presented by the Obsesstovian 95. Now he will go and review the enemies of the third Doctor set. Jesus Christ, that is very hard to use, this puppet. It really is, because my hands are very big. And you know what they say about guys with big hands. Big feet. Hello everyone, and welcome to my review of the enemies of the third Doctor set. As you can see, in this set we have 3 different enemies from the third Doctor Jon Pertwee era. We have an Auton from his very first story, Spearhead from Space. We have Omega from the 10th anniversary special story, The Three Doctors. And finally, we have a rather large Drashig figure slash puppet. But I'll go more into detail when I get to that figure. But, or whatever. Figure, puppet, whatever the hell you want to call it. But first off, let's take a look at the Auton as seen from Spearhead from Space. Now, if you want me to be completely honest with you guys, I don't really like this figure. I absolutely love this figure. This is one of the best figures that have ever been released by Character Options. I've waited for this figure for absolutely ages to be released. As soon as the classic range was announced by Character back in 2008, I knew that they just had to release the classic Auton, especially after the disaster which was the new series Auton action figures with the whole twisty hands business. Because, as I said in that review quite a long time ago now, I said that that was all inaccurate and it was just completely wrong.
What the hell? This is incorrect.
So when they finally got around to releasing this figure as part of the set in late 2011, I was just jumping for joy. And for me, these Autons may be the definitive Autons, because I actually find these quite a threat. I think they're at the most threatening in both Spearhead from Space and Terror of the Autons. And yeah, they are quite good in Rose, but I actually prefer them in the 1970s. But yeah, here we have the Auton, and yeah, it's just absolutely brilliant. And one thing which I think is great is that they've actually reused a sculpt, and they've just repainted slightly, and that's the actual body. This is actually a repaint of a Captain Jack Harkness action figure. Now, usually, as I said back in my review of the enemies of the first Doctor set, I complained a little bit about the Roboman, how it reused a few things from the Count Scarleone Scaroff figure from the City of Death set, as that wasn't really necessary, especially with the whole handkerchief and everything like that, because I'm pretty sure that Robomen didn't go around with handkerchiefs in their pockets, seeing as they were zombified creatures. But here, this is absolutely necessary, because this is more or less the same thing what the character of Captain Jack Harkness wore in the show as well. They both wore more or less the same things. So I think that's really good that they've paid attention to detail and that. But is it me? But they slightly do look a little bit different, especially around the torso area. He looks sort of strong in some way, very powerful. And I just think the detail all around is very, very good. We've also got this scarf here at the chest area, around the neck area, which I believe is a new sculpt, because they had to remodify a few things to suit this figure. and the feet have been repainted silver, which is completely correct. That is how they appeared in the program, so I'm really happy they did that, and they've modified a few things to suit this, and it just works perfectly. And I think the face sculpt, we just get a closer look at the face. I think the face sculpt is just absolutely fantastic. The lack of eye sockets, it just adds to this perfectly. I just think the detail all around is just, oh, it's amazing. I love it. It's just brilliant. It just looks like how the average Auton looked in this particular story. And one thing I really love is it's got two hands. It's got a normal hand like that, and it's got the open hand, and they've even added detail to the open hand, and yes, it is actually accurate this time, so it's opened like that, and it's got the gun inside, got a little bit of blue in there, and it's like got a little bit of sockets and wiring and things like that. Just a little bit how it appeared in the show. May not be entirely accurate, but I think it works, it does the job. And this hand is just sculpted like that to make it look like it's just walking around motionless. The articulation goes like this. The head, it can't really do a 360 because it's kind of hindered by this neck scarf. The arms, they can do a 360. There's no bicep articulation because this is a reuse of the Captain Jack Harkness figure, which came out earlier on in the range. The elbows can move up and down. The Auton wrist can do a 360 degree turn. There is a 360 articulation movement at the waist. They can go all the way around. The legs can move up and down, and they can go side to side, and they can actually do the splits. And the knees can bend back and forth. There's no articulation at the feet, and that's absolutely fine. I'm not really bothered about that. So yeah, that is pretty much the detail and articulation of this Auton. It comes with two accessories, as I pointed out. It comes with the alternative hand, so if you just want to display him without the open hands aiming a weapon at you, then you can do so, and you can recreate those iconic scenes from this story. He also comes with this accessory, which is basically like the beacon that you see at the very beginning of the story. It's pretty much just a pink blob of plastic, really. Not much to really say. Kind of looks a little bit like a jelly baby, in my opinion. But yeah, works very well. It looks a little bit like how it did in the actual program. It's just a blob of plastic, really. And that's what these creatures are, because they are plastic. So yeah, overall, all around, this is a absolutely amazing figure. One of the best figures ever made by Character Options, in my opinion. One of the best Doctor Who action figures of all time. The next figure in this set is Omega, who made his first appearance in the third Doctor story, The Three Doctors. And this was probably his definitive appearance, in my opinion, because a lot of people, including myself, prefer Omega's appearance from this story compared to his appearance in the Fifth Doctor story, Arc of Infinity. And I can see why. This design is very iconic. It's much better than how Omega appeared in the latter story, and I think it suits the figure very well. I would have much rather seen this version released as a figure compared to another version, which would have been the Arc of Infinity version. So I'm really glad that they went with this version and not the latter, because I think it would have pissed many fans off, including myself. The detail is very nice. It looks just how Omega did in the program. They've given him a gold helmet, and chest area, and they've like given it sort of like a dirty wash on top, which I think is very nice. And the glove areas and the wrist areas painted in the same way, especially the gloves, which are painted in more of a metallic sort of gold colour, which I think works very nice. And the feet area, they're just painted the same, and underneath the figure is also painted in the same sort of colour scheme. So I think the detail around it, I think they've done a good job in recreating what we saw on the TV screens back in 1972 and 1973. Now this is one of the taller figures from the action figure range, as Omega was an imposing character from Doctor Who, and I'm really glad that they paid attention to this, because they could have completely mucked up the scale. If this was 3.75, this probably would have been the case, because let's just face it, 3.75 figures, in my opinion, suck. In terms of Doctor Who, that is. Star Wars, they don't do a bad job, in my opinion. So yes, and one thing to note with this particular action figure is that it's soft goods. So all this glittery stuff, all this blue, it's all soft goods. Now, I've said in the past, I don't really like soft goods on action figures. I think on some of them, particularly in this scale, 5 inches, I think if they were like 12 inches, then yeah, fair enough. Big Chief Studios, they do their figures, and they're absolutely amazing. They look right. It works in that scale, 12 inch. But with something like 5 inch, 6 inch, it's hit and miss, really. I mentioned in my action figure review of the Darth Vader from the Star Wars Black series that cloak on that was soft goods, and it was sort of hit and miss. It kind of worked, but at the same time it's kind of fiddly. I think the soft goods on Omega here, I think they just get away with it, in my opinion, because sometimes I don't like it when they do this, and they've hardly ever done it in the Doctor Who action figure range. The first time I remember seeing them do it was with the Sea Devil action figure, but I think for that particular figure it worked very well. I think it was very appropriate that they did that, and I think, looking back now, with this figure, if this was just all plastic, say all this blue stuff, all the cape and everything, all this was plastic, I don't think it would have added to the figure. So I think the soft goods approach in this particular circumstance, I think, was a good idea by whoever came up with the idea, Alistair Dewar or whoever, because I think looking at it now, it kind of works quite well, and it's quite surprising, really, because, like I said, I'm not really a fan of all that type of thing, soft goods and everything like that. And you are able to like move it about and things, but it's just one thing I'm a little bit worried about, and it's the glitter, and it falls off and everything, and eventually all of it could go. So I'm very, very careful when I pick this figure up off the shelf, say when I'm dusting it and things. So you have to be very careful about that. That's the only nitpick I have, the only gripe I have with the soft goods. The glitter can just fall off very, very easily. But the arms, the articulation, you know, when you move it about, again, you have to be very, very careful that the glitter doesn't fall off and everything like that, or anything from the cloak doesn't fall off, not just the glitter. Quite a few things fell out of the clothing the first time I took this out of the packaging. It's like here now, just a little bit have come off there, which is a bit worrying. So we just need to be very, very careful with when showing the articulation now. So as you can see, the articulation the arms are ball jointed, as this was released later on. They started doing the ball joints around this period, but the arms themselves, they can't do a 360 because they're hindered by the actual soft goods material of the cloak. There is articulation there, but again, you just need to be very, very careful, so it can go all the way around and everything like that. There's nothing around the hands or anything like that. There is articulation at the legs, but I don't really want to do it because it would be a pain in the arse to stand up again. You just take a look. I can't really do it because it's all like that. It's all over the place. Because I remember once there was a little cock-up with my coat and I couldn't get him to stand up again, so I've posed it in a way that he just stays stood up, because seeing as it is quite a tall action figure in this line, sometimes it can fall down, so I've managed to make a way for Omega to stand up. The head, though, that can move about. I say it can move about, can move a bit, but when you try to move it, it comes off. Now this is very interesting. I'll just give you a closer look at the head. So yeah, look how magnificent the head is there. I think it's absolutely perfect. It just looks how it did in the show, and they've just added the dirty wash on top of it to just add to that. It looks absolutely brilliant. Now, the reason this is removable, and you can remove it very easily, is because this is a helmet, and it's not an actual head, really. And the reason for this is because you can recreate that scene towards the end when he takes his helmet off, but there's nothing there. It's just all gone. So he's not got a head, and he's just headless, basically. And I'm glad they did this, to be honest. I think it was a good move by a character. And there's like a little magnet sort of thing here. There's no pegs or anything like that, which is quite strange. So let's see if we can just pop this back on. It just plugs in like so. You can't really move the head around because when you try, it just pops off like that. And it just pops off very, very easily as well. But you can easily put it back on. It, doesn't fall off or anything like that. So yeah, not that bad. But yeah, I think this is absolutely marvellous figure in my opinion. Again, this is one of the best figures probably that Character Options have ever made, because I love the Three Doctors as a story. It's one of my favourite stories, and I love Omega as a character. I think he's a great villain. So I was absolutely amazed when we finally got word that this was getting released, and it was even better that it was getting released alongside the Auton, because as I said earlier, the Auton is also one of the best action figures to ever be released in the Doctor Who range. So yes, Omega also is an absolutely brilliant figure, and is one of the very many reasons why you should pick up this amazing set. And finally in this set we have the rather interesting Drashig figure / puppet. Now first off, Carnival of Monsters is a story which, in my opinion, I think is a little bit overrated. I think it's an alright story, don't get me wrong, I think it's alright. It's not terrible, it's not that I don't like it, I do like it, but I just think it's very overrated. But I think the release of the Drashigs is a very welcome one in this line, in my opinion. But it was very interesting to see where they would go with this. And what the character have done is they've made it a sort of hand puppet. Now, I think the detail on this is just absolutely amazing. And yeah, this is huge. You thought Omega was huge. This is bloody ginormous. Just all the detail all around, all the brown and all the green, and it's just amazing paintwork all around, and it looks just how the Drashigs did in the story, although I would have liked to see the eyes be a little bit more red, because if I recall, the eyes were red as opposed to just being black. But I'm not complaining. I still think it looks very good. It's just amazing detail, nostrils and everything. It's just brilliant, and the teeth are just brilliant as well. They're absolutely magnificent, and the tongue and side, at the top of the mouth, very, very good detail in my opinion. Very, very good paintwork. This is probably some of the best paintwork that Character Options have ever done. You can see the back, they've also done a good job as well. So yeah, the way this works is, you've got a hole here. You put your hand inside the hole, and then there's like a part when you get up to the mouth area, you can just make him talk with his mouth like that, and you can just make him open it and close it. So I think this is a very good idea by Character Options, what they've done here. I think it works very, very well with this Drashig, and it's very unique because it's the only time that they've ever done this with a figure or monster from Doctor Who so far. So yeah, I think that overall the Drashig is quite a interesting idea. Whether you call it a figure or a hand puppet, it's all up to you really, but I think that it is rather unique and one of the highlights of the Enemies of the Third Doctor set. The set as a whole is just bloody amazing. This is miles better than the Enemies of the First Doctor set, because in that I said that, yeah, there were more or less re-releases in that set. We had another Dalek. Okay, it had a Pyroflame, and to be fair, the Dalek was the favourite of mine in that set. The only new sort of character in that set was the Roboman, albeit that was a repaint of a previous figure. And yeah, we just had a Cyberman, which was just a lazy re-release. But here we get 3 brand new figures. Okay, part of the Auton is also repainted, but at least this is more interesting, and plus the repaint was absolutely necessary, because I think they should have just done a new sculpt completely with the Roboman, but that's my opinion. So yeah, the Auton itself, brilliant figure, absolutely amazing, one of the best figures ever, as is Omega. He was one of the fan favourites for a long time. People wanted figures of these two, and they thought, bring them out together in this set. It was the perfect way to do it. And the same goes for this Drashig. I don't think many expected a Drashig, if I recall, and I think maybe a few were surprised. I was certainly surprised, because I wanted these two, but when I found out that they were coming with this guy, I was slightly bewildered, as thinking, how's Drashig going to work? But I think the way it works as a hand puppet as well as something to display on the shelf, I think it was a good move by Character Options. Plus, the detail on this thing is just absolutely amazing. The detail all around on all 3 of the figures that you see in this set is absolutely amazing. So yes, this set is definitely more worth buying than the Enemies of the First Doctor set. The Enemies of the Third Doctor set is just brilliant, because you get an Auton, you get Omega, you get a Drashig as well. What's not to like about this set? I think the only downside about this is if you're after doing things like army building, then Omega you can't exactly army build, because he's just one character. You can't really have an army of Omegas. But if you want to army build Autons, then yes, this is great. And you can also army build with your Drashig as well, as there was more than one of them that appeared in Carnival of Monsters. So yeah, great set. I recommend this very highly. This is one of the best sets ever made, in my opinion. Go out and get it. If you're a huge fan of the Third Doctor era, then get it. And if you like collecting action figures and for some reason you've not got this set, what are you waiting for? Get it. These are just 3 brilliant figures from one of my favourite eras of the show. I would just get it because it's just brilliant. Thank you very much, everybody, for watching this action figure review. I hope you all enjoyed it and stuck around all the way through. And until next time, everybody, have a nice day and cheerio.